Welcome. The app we're going to be building is called the Weekly Meal Planner. As you can see from our mock-up layout here, it's yet simple and dynamic. The user will input 7 meals with details and then see those meals randomly displayed throughout 7 days. There'll be a print option. There'll be a button to input the meals and a button to randomize the plan. Let's move on to the app. Begin by opening up Sublime Text. Back in Sublime Text. As you can see, I have the planner.html template app up. Let's look at some of the tags. Beginning with the meta tag. This is used to control the display of our application, whether it's viewed in a tablet or a phone. Its initial scale will always be of 1, meaning we will avoid any kind of pinching in issues. Next, we have our style tag, which closes way down here at the bottom. This is used to control the look of our page. We'll look into this later on. Next, we have the body tag, which is used to control the structure of our page. We will begin building our page right below the line that says construct HTML below. But before we do that, let's scroll back to the top of our page and let's give our page a title. We'll do this by highlighting the inner HTML and renaming it. I think I'll title my web app Weekly Meal Planner. This will display in the tab of our website. To see this, let's save our page. File, Save As. I'm going to navigate to my desktop. I'm going to choose New Folder. I'm going to title this Weekly Meal Planner. In fact, we should title this Weekly, WEKLY _ meal _ planner. It's important that we don't use spaces when we're trying to put stuff on the web. Meal planner.html. Make sure you include the file extension when saving in Sublime Text, whether it's an HTML file, JavaScript file, or CSS file. Let's go ahead and save. We're ready to start programming. We can do this by navigating down to the line that says construct HTML below. Before we start laying out any HTML, let's look at the app structure. To the user, our app will look like this. It will consist of a header, an input box, a text area, and a table, along with a couple of buttons. When we program this in HTML, though, we want to look at this as being consistent of areas. First, the rows, which span across and divide up our web page along its horizontal axis. We have the top row, the top middle row, the mid row, the base, this lower area, and then our bottom row, with a total of 6. Within each row, we will embed or nest columns to divide up the vertical areas. These columns will be divided into various sections, depending on their need. They will all each equal in width 100%. We'll use percentages to divide up the columns, while the rows will be given absolute values in pixels. The columns in the top will be divided as such. We'll have 25% here, 25% here, 50% in the center for a total of 100. 50% here, 50% here for a total width of 100. Again, we're going to repeat that 2-division column, 50%, 50%, total of 100, 50%, 50%, total of 100. Now this section is particularly unique because it does not actually have a column division. This is just a 100% row division, meaning there is no division. Now below this, we have again embedded into this row 75%, 25% for a total again of 100. Now if you notice that we're using 4 divisions, 4 equal divisions for each column. 25%, 25%, 25%, 25%. Now, you're welcome to change the amount of divisions based off of the style of application or location of these areas that you'll need. Let's go ahead and begin developing our application. We'll start by building the rows. We have 6 rows to build. Each row will be given a unique ID, which will control its height, and then they will all be set to a class of row, all given the same width. We use IDs to distinguish individuality. In this instance, we'll need to individualize each row with a unique height. This row will be of height 150 pixels. This row will be of height 100 pixels. This row will be of height 200 pixels. This row will be of height of 100 pixels, 300 pixels, and 100 pixels. These may vary depending on the need of the app. They could vary in this app itself. Let's move on to Sublime Text. We are going to start by building the div blocks, tags that will control these areas. Back in Sublime Text. Navigate to the line that says construct HTML below. We're going to begin here on the next line below it. We'll start with creating the wrapper div. Now remember back in our mockup, the wrapper div is used to control the overall content. It's the first div that we will create. We'll do this by selecting the less than sign, followed by the word div, div. Now in Sublime Text, because we are in HTML, we can autocomplete. This is great for when we need to quickly add tags into our HTML. We can do this by hitting enter. As you can see, we're given both the opening and closing tag. You can distinguish the difference between the two by the slash. Let's use the autocomplete option when we're laying out all of our tags. Now, this tag is on one line. We want to separate the tags so that we have enough space to embed or nest other tags within it. We'll do this by clicking in between the inner HTML of the tag or in between the opening tag and closing tag. Then we'll hit enter a couple of times to give ourselves some space. Now let's remove the rest of the lines down here. We don't need these lines. Let's stop at the end of HTML comment that's left for us. This is essentially the area in which our application will reside. Let's give our div an ID. We'll do this by clicking within the opening div tag, right next to the last letter of the tag name. We'll hit space. We'll type I followed by D. Our autocomplete feature comes up. We can hit enter to accept the autocomplete. It will complete our code, giving us the equal sign and the quotes. Inside of this ID quote, let's give it a name. We're going to call this first div the wrapper. This is a general name used. You don't have to use this name. You don't have to spell it in this way. IDs are unique to you. You can use them in any way you want or come up with whatever names you'd like. Just remember that when you're referencing them, you have to refer to them in the same way. Now, this will take care of the outer structure of our application. This will contain all of this area that I'm showing you right now with my cursor. That's what we just constructed. Next thing we need to do is we need to do the 6 rows that will be embedded within the wrapper. If you look at my display here, I have a wrapper that's identified in the pink, and then I have the red rows. Let's look at the wrapper and rows themselves. This is the wrapper that we just created. It contains all of our elements. We'll begin by creating the first row here. It's going to be another div. Its ID will be top, and its class will be row. Before we continue, let's also give the wrapper a class. Let's autocomplete, type row, and now we're ready to move on to the next div. Begin with the less than sign, div, enter to complete. Because we will be embedding content into this div, let's also hit enter to give ourselves some space. Inside of the opening tag, let's give this an ID of top and also the class of row. Because we will be using class quite often, why don't we just copy the contents class row and paste when we need to use that. So far, we've created the wrapper, and inside the wrapper, we've nested another div. Let's look at what we've done so far. We have the wrapper, and then we have the div area. Let's create another div row. We'll do this by hitting enter. We're already tabbed in. The tab in is good to give indication as to objects that are nested. You can see when you read down that this is the parent, and the tabs within are their children. So on this line, let's go ahead and create another div, less than sign, div, hit enter to separate, and inside of the opening tag, ID, this one, let's name meal area, since it's going to reference this area for the meals. These are just generic names, but we want to make sure that we're using no spaces when giving these names, giving these areas names. So, name of meal area. There you go. Name of meal area. And this will also be given the class of row, since this is a row. Let's continue. This is going to be this section area. Maybe we call it details. And so I can keep the same type of name convention. This isn't important, but I think I'll rename this top area. Okay, this div will also get the class of row. Don't forget to give each row a class of row so that they can be beholden to the rules of row, which say they will span 100%. Let's create the next div. This is the button area. ID, class of row. Next div. ID. This will be the calendar. We can call this weekly area. Try to come up with unique IDs. I'm not sure why they did that. Let me make sure I copy the correct class. Alright. So each one of these divs, still embedded. Class of row, weekly. Let's make another one. This ID is going to be the weekly calendar, and last one is the printer, or print me. So print area. Make sure that you write it within the quotes. Give yourself a space before you do the class. Everything should be embedded within the opening tag of the div. Okay, let's count. Make sure we have 6 rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Let's go ahead and clean up this space here by deleting a couple of lines. So now our wrapper contains 6 divs that are all given the class of row and each with a unique ID. The ID will control the height. The class will control the width. Let's go ahead and save. Next, we'll go ahead and start writing the divs for the class or for the columns. Now remember, these divs will be embedded into each of these row divs. Alright, so far we've created our 6 row classes. This will take care of all the rows in our application. Now, in between each row, we divide it into columns, depending on the content that's going to reside. Because we want to put the weekly meal planner text in the center, the top row will be divided into 3 divs, as seen here. Div 1, Div 2, and Div 3. Div 1 and Div 3 will be given the rule that tells their widths to expand 25%, while Div 2 will be given the rule to expand 50%. Let's go ahead and do that now. So within the first row, the top row, we're going to nest 3 more divs. Make sure that you're nesting your divs by indenting twice, so that the div is nested within its row. This is not important to the code. It's more important to the programmer so that you can see the events that are happening. Inside of this div, we're going to go ahead and create a class of column 1. Let's go ahead and write into the inner HTML so we can see this div in action. Let's say 25% width. This will actually show up within the box. Let's go ahead and copy this whole div, and let's paste it twice below. All within, again, the top area row. Now, all we need to do is change the second div to column 2. We'll change this to 50%. And finally, so we can see everything in action, why don't we come up here to our rules, and let's write a rule for both our row and our columns for borders. The rule for borders looks like this. We'll begin in the columns section that references all 3 columns. Begin by typing the word border, and then go ahead and let it autocomplete. Now for the border, we need 3 parameters. We need the pixel size, the type of border, and the color. This rule will affect all 3 columns. Let's go ahead and copy the border rule, and let's use it for the rows. But this time, we'll simply change the color. Now when we save and we open in our browser, we now have our 3 rows, or our 3 columns, embedded within our top row. But as you can see, our columns heights are higher or bigger than the row height. We can use a simple rule on a div to fix this. Back into the coding. Go back down to the area that's dealing with the 3 rows or the 3 columns. We're going to go ahead and add one more div. And we're going to create a new class. We'll call this the fix. Now let's write a rule for the fix class. I'm going to copy the word fix, and then if we move up to our rows or to our styling section, let's go ahead and add that class right below the row class in a new line. I'll go ahead and hit enter to give myself some space. I'll indent once. To identify a class, you hit period and then the class name followed by the brackets, and then we're going to expand these brackets. The only rule that we need to add to the fix is the clear. What this will do is this will clear both. This will clear up that content, making sure that all 3 divs fit inside of its master. Let's go ahead and open this up. Now, as you can see, the results are much different. We have the 3 columns residing within the row. By using that 4th empty div, we force these 3 columns to reside inside of the mother or the main parent. Let's repeat this process for the rest of our content. Basically, what we could do is copy these divs and use them as we need them. Let's look at our mockup to see what divs we'll be copying. So for the second section, we will need to use column 2 and column 2 again. So we will copy this one twice. Paste this one into the div for the name of the area. On this side, the left side, I'm going to put text box. This is where the text box will reside. And on the right, I'm actually going to write the contents. Please enter a mail. Let's go ahead and save. Open a browser. And again, you can see that we're having that issue where our columns are outside of our row. We'll use this div down here to fix that. Copy that div. We'll paste it in here. The fix will fix these 2 divs. Let's save. We'll open a browser and we will refresh. And again, as you can see, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Let's go ahead and copy this down again. We'll take the contents of this row, all these 3 divs, since it's basically repeating the pattern on this one, and this one as well. We'll do both of these. We'll come into the details area. We'll paste. We'll line this up. Let's change this to details. This area, details. Please enter meal details. And down below, this will represent the buttons. This one will show the number of meals. And this will be where our button resides. So we'll put 1 and 2. Next, we have this open area. Now remember, I said we are not going to implant or embed any columns into this section. So we'll leave this blank. The last section is again a 2 split, but this time it's going to be 75%, 25%. We can take this, copy it, and then for the print area, paste. Let's make a couple of changes here. This is going to be column 3, or 75%. This is going to be column 1, or 25%. This is going to be the print button. And this is going to remain blank. Let's see what we've done so far. Looks pretty good. We've got 3 rows, 2 rows, another set of rows, or columns, I apologize, 3 columns, 2 columns, 2 more columns, 2 more columns, no columns, and then 2 more columns at the bottom. Our structure is set up. Let's create the content for each of these columns. According to our mockup, for the top row, we'll have nothing in the first column, we'll have an H1 tag in the second column, and again, nothing in the third column. Let's go ahead and do that. Let's remove all of the inner HTML content. For the area that's going to receive inner HTML content, the middle column, let's go ahead and expand that by hitting enter twice. And then let's nest our H1 tag. Go ahead and autocomplete to accept the tag. And let's tab it in once so that we can see visually that it is nested within inside of the second column. In between the inner HTML of the H1 tag, let's write weekly meal planner. That should take care of that first part. Let's go ahead and save. And let's look at our results. Looking great. The next thing we need to do is we need to go down to the second row. And for the column on the left side, we're going to add a text box. So the div for the text area, or the name of area, the first column on the left side, this div, will be the text box. Let's replace its inner HTML in the same fashion that we did up here, by highlighting it, hitting enter twice, and then nesting within this div a tag, specifically the input tab. Let's go ahead and autocomplete. Let's tab this in as well. And for the type, we're going to choose text. For the ID, let's give it name of meal. We'll use this ID name. We'll use this ID in place of the word name so that we can reference it in our script. The next area, the details. This will have a text area along with some text. Let's highlight the area that's going to contain the text area, and let's just repeat the same process. Hit enter twice, and let's nest in here another tag. This time we're going to use the text area tag. Let's make sure this is nested within. The text area tag needs some attributes. We need to put in the rows. We'll use 5 rows. And the amount of columns. We'll do something like 30 columns. Let's look and see what we've done. Perfect. As you can see, we have text area, a text box, please enter a meal, please enter details. Unfortunately, right now everything is aligned to the left, but we can take care of that later using styles. Moving on, the button. In our mockup, the button is on the right side, so that would be this inner HTML here. Be very careful what you're selecting. You don't want to remove these symbols. Hit enter twice, and let's nest into here two buttons. One for submitting, submit meal, and another button for randomizing the meals. Again, we must indent these two buttons to show that they are nested. The next area is the calendar. This will be a table. We'll take care of the table in the next video. Moving down is our last row, which contains two columns, and the one on the right will house our button. Let's go ahead and add that now. For our last div, this is what we're going to be changing. Let's hit enter, and within this div, let's nest in the button. Print list. Let's save, and let's look at the results. Perfect. Our structure is laid out. We have the contents for an input, text area, number of meals left, some details to give the user some information on what to do in these areas, two buttons to submit, randomize, and a print. The only thing we have not added is our table. We'll do that now. Alright, let's go ahead and work on our table. Our table will be divided into 7 rows, or 7 columns, I apologize, with 2 rows. Those 7 columns will hold the days of the week. So let's begin. Inside of the div that's referencing the weekly area, we're going to embed a table. Let's expand this table tag. So for a table for the table to work, we need to give it some rows. So let's create a table row. And inside of this table row, we're going to add some headers. Think about the row as being like the row here or here. These are just these areas. So we've established one row. Within this row, we're going to have various columns, or what they call headers. Moving back. So into this first row, let's add 7 headers. TH. Let's copy this 7 times over. Or 6 more times. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. For a total of 7. In between each, let's give the day of the week. So for the first table header, it'll be Sunday. The second one, Monday. Tuesday. Wednesday. Thursday. Friday, and Saturday. Now, we're going to build another table row. And in this table row, we're going to have table data. 7 table data. With unique IDs. So this table data is to be given an ID. Let's go ahead and copy this 7 times over. Or 6 times. Paste it 6 times. All within this new row. So we have 2 rows. One row which contains 7 headers. Another row below it which contains 7 data points. Let's go ahead and give each one of these IDs the same name as the day. We'll use these IDs in JavaScript. Let's go ahead and look at what we've done so far. Excellent. We've established a table, which isn't showing much, with some data. To see the data, all we'd have to do is just add something. Into the inner HTML of each table data. Etc. We don't need to do this though. Let's clear up those borders so we can see our app more clearly. We'll do this by navigating up to the style section, particularly to the area which references the border within the row. Let's remove that one. And also the border within the 3 columns. Save. Much better. Our application is coming together now.